The year is 1998, or 1922, depending on how you look at it. In a move that would no doubt have the modern-day string pullers at LEGO deucing their dungarees, a brand new theme, completely devoid of cell phones, solar panels, and electric cars, hit store shelves on New Year's Day. The builds took inspiration from your history books. The vehicles look like something your great-great-grandpa would have driven. And, in the late 90s, the main character would have been old enough to be your great-great-grandpa. No laser guns? No high-tech gear? Who wants to play with antiques? Who on earth thought this was something kids were gonna like? Niels Milan Peterson, that's who. And he was absolutely right. The sets were an instant hit, and would eventually spawn 3 sequels over the next 6 years, all while taking kids across deserts, through jungles, alongside dinosaurs, and eventually on an epic final quest throughout the Orient. Adventurers was a theme like no other, and its legend lives on in the fond memories and collections of builders across the globe. But every expedition has a first step, and many would argue that LEGO put their best foot forward with this one. So in today's Retrospectacle, let's find out why, after all these years, it remains one of LEGO's greatest, most beloved explorations of the spirit of adventure. Welcome to Trikbrix. Hello again everyone, I'm Jamie. Very few LEGO themes stir up my nostalgia quite like Adventurers, and of its 4 sub-themes, none more so than Johnny Thunder's first expedition across the golden sands of Egypt, in search of Pharaoh Hotep's powerful and mysterious Regal ruby. I have vivid memories of getting my January 1998 issue of LEGO Mania magazine in the mail, and being introduced to this now iconic run of sets and minifigures for the first time. I was immediately blown away. The builds were obviously amazing, but what really captured my attention was just how much there was to learn about this new theme. Adventurers was one of LEGO's first forays into crafting and developing an entire cast of well-thought-out characters, beyond just a name and bespoke elements. Other themes may have had a few named characters, but here everyone was introduced, complete with backstories and motivations. We had Johnny Thunder, the daring leader of the adventurers. Miss Gale Storm, the fearless photographer and journalist. Dr. Charles Lightning, Johnny's uncle and the brains of the operation. Harry Kane, the best pilot in the world and Johnny's right-hand man. Baron von Barron, a greedy treasure seeker who'll stop at nothing to hook his prize. Sam Sinister, an evil genius bent on besting his arch-nemesis, Johnny Thunder. And finally, Pharaoh Hotep. He doesn't look a day over 3,000, and he's spent all that time laying out tricks and traps for anyone who dares disturb his magical ruby. Never before had we seen such a crew, and while, much to my chagrin, some of their names may have been changed, the majority of them would stick around for all of the subsequent sub-themes. But there's an elephant in the room here that needs addressing, and it's not this one. Adventurers has long been labeled as a ripoff of Indiana Jones, even by those who love it. But the inspiration for a daring, treasure-hunting adventurer goes back way further than 1981's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just like George Lucas's other little creation was inspired by the sci-fi serials of the 1930s, Indiana Jones himself was derivative of countless adventure stories dating back to the 1800s, and even other films. Just look at this image of Charlton Heston in Secret of the Incas. This was from 1954, nearly 3 decades before Indiana Jones. So while Johnny Thunder may have drawn some inspiration from good old Dr. Jones, can you really call a ripoff of a ripoff a ripoff? One thing's for certain though, these sets more than hold their own against anything we ever saw in the officially licensed Indiana Jones themes. And much like the Pirates of 1989, you can really feel the love, attention to detail, and no-holds-barred attitude that went into them. So, without further ado, let's dig in. We're going to be looking at these in order of piece count today, but before that, it's worth mentioning that Adventurers had a lot of promo releases. These were all less than 20 pieces and ranged from the ever-present Kabaya Sweets tie-ins to promotions offered by Nestle, Kellogg's, Shell Petroleum, and others. Some of these even saw multiple releases through different companies, and you'll find multiple set numbers to reflect that. While none of them are going to set your collection on fire, and some of them are downright laughable, a few favorites of mine would be Adventurer's Raft and Mummy and Cart, both of which fit in well with the main releases. Also of note was the Adventurer's Accessories Service Pack, numbered 5381, which was an absolute treasure trove of brand new elements and prints. Our first set actually pulled double duty as both a promo set and a regular retail release. 5900, aptly named Adventurer Johnny Thunder, reminds me of what made 90s LEGO so great. Cracking open this adorable little box in 1998 would have not only given you the theme's main character, but also a slew of accessories, everything needed to get your adventure started. And besides Johnny himself, with his trademark bush hat and iconic face print, 4 of these elements were brand new at the time. While Adventurers wouldn't come close to rivaling the over 3 dozen new pieces the Pirates enjoyed upon their release, what it did add to the LEGO Parts catalog was no small contribution. I loved this opening backpack as a kid, and the working magnifying glass was incredibly cool. The new Scorpion and crate were so good, they're still in production today, as is the shovel, which, if you didn't know, is as old as minifigures themselves, first being introduced in 1978, making it one of the longest-running LEGO accessories ever. We also get a few weapons and the printed dynamite tile. The only thing I feel missing here is a map. Otherwise, this is a fantastic set, despite its meager part count. Next up, we've got one of the best all-around vehicles in the entire theme, 5918 Scorpion Tracker. There's so much potential for imaginative storytelling packed into these 35 pieces, and as a kid, I had an absolute blast with it. Matter of fact, I still do. It works so great as either a standalone toy or as an add-on to any of the larger offerings in the wave. And thanks to its $4 price tag, it was an easy entry point to Adventurers. The rugged design utilizes quite a few more new elements, like the wheels and tires, axles, specialized grille, windshield, and one of my favorite things to come out of this series, the 2-seater cab. If you grew up with cars like this, you can see why this part was a pretty big deal. No more long, lonely drives, now our minifigures could ride side by side. This set also gives us our first look at these new binoculars, as well as one of 4 treasure maps scattered across the sub-theme. And there's actually more to these than meets the eye, which I'll touch on later. I really don't think you can go wrong with this one. If you watched any of my other videos, you know one of my favorite things to do is modify sets more to my liking, but this one is pretty much perfect straight out of the box. Sticking to the motor pool, our next set resides somewhere between a promotional and regular release. It wasn't a free gift, unfortunately, but it was limited in its availability. 2995 Adventurer's Car was offered in US shop-at-home catalogs, as well as a store in Holland named Kruidvat. Because of this, a lot of kids missed out on this one, which is unfortunate because it's such a fantastic vehicle. As much as I love the Scorpion Tracker, I think the additional versatility and accessories push this one slightly ahead for me. We get 2 minifigures here, Dr. Lightning, and one of my all-time favorite 90s figs, the classic floppy-armed skeleton. Dr. Lightning comes equipped with yet another element making its debut, the vintage movie camera, which comes with a 1x2 film tile depicting Johnny at the entrance of a tomb. This probably should have been in black and white, but it's still pretty cool nonetheless. Not to be outdone, our skeleton gets this amazing new headdress piece, as well as a ruby, which to me was as good as actual treasure at the time. Of course, it's up to you to decide if this is the real Regao ruby or a clever decoy. The ample bed space is great for hauling all kinds of stuff to and from the dig site, which is perfect because we're given a ton of accessories here, including our second treasure map. I didn't mention it before, but the cab features this handy slot for storing these maps, or any other 2x2 tiles you might have. This one can be more difficult to find than some of the other sets in the wave, but thankfully there aren't any super rare parts, so bricklinking it together isn't much of an issue. But however you choose to procure it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Taking to the skies and switching sides, 5928 Bi-Wing Baron gives us our first look at some of the adventurer's opposition. This sleek as a 1920s biplane can be aircraft is the perfect way for our villains to get a buzzard's eye view of the spoils below. It's not my favorite biplane in the series, we'll get to that one in a bit, but overall this is a wonderful little set. It's absolutely armed to the teeth with 4 mounted guns, any of which can be pulled off and used in hand by Baron von Baron if the need arises. And knowing Baron, it definitely will. I also love the way the engine has been constructed, with just a bit of detail here to depict the rotary engine. We get the same map tile we just saw in the adventurer's car, and there's a nifty spot in the cockpit to store it. Otherwise, I do find this space a bit lacking, with no flight controls to speak of, but that's an easy enough upgrade to make if you'd like. The nimble size makes it perfect for swooshing around the house, and being the only wide release set in the entire adventurer's theme dedicated to a villainous aircraft makes it stand out. And it's usually pretty inexpensive to pick up, so it gets an absolute green light in my eyes. As far as small sets go, 5938 Oasis Ambush is one of the best LEGO has ever produced, and a personal favorite of mine. Granted, I may be a bit blinded by nostalgia here, as this was my first excursion into the adventurers, but I do really believe this is a phenomenal little set. It's also got some pedigree behind it. This is the only adventurer set to sport a Niels Milan Petersen design credit, according to Brickset. Of course, being the theme's spearhead, his contributions extended far beyond this. In fact, he developed and designed some of Adventurer's most iconic elements. Notice a resemblance? We've got Mr. Petersen to thank for Mr. Thunder. And as far as the set goes, you'd be hard-pressed to find another in this size range that so perfectly encapsulates the essence of what the theme is all about. We've got a wonderful ancient tomb, featuring some excellent graphic design work on the sides, and topped off with a jackal build that still holds up to this day. Its body is ingeniously realized with a black treasure chest, which cradles a few gold coins. One of the best play features in the wave can also be found here. If we ignore the curse plainly illustrated on this printed tile, pulling back on the spear slowly raises the lid of the tomb, revealing another long-gone pharaoh. Or is he part of Hotep's undead army? Again, if you've watched even just a handful of my videos, then you've probably heard me wax poetic at least once about one of my all-time favorite retired LEGO builds, the jointed palm tree. It's such a great representation, and so easily customizable, both visually and in the near infinite number of ways it can be positioned. It was just absolutely perfect. This one gives our minifigures a bit of relief from the desert sun, and speaking of minifigures, our hero is pitted against his arch-rival at the time, the nefarious Sam Sinister. Sadly, the Egyptian wave would be his only appearance in the entire theme, but that doesn't keep him from being an iconic, important part of the story. If you're just beginning your excursion into adventurers, I can't recommend a better way to dip your toe in than with this right here. It's simply one of the best small sets ever. And now we go from one of my favorites to one of my least favorites. 2996 Adventurer's Tomb was bundled with the aforementioned Adventurer's Car, making it a limited release. And I can't say I'm too broken up about that, because apart from the minifigs and a few cool elements, this set doesn't have much going for it. It's called a tomb, but it's basically a doorway to nowhere. To be fair, as far as doorways go, it's a great design, but I can't help but feel like there's only half a set here. Rather than waste parts on this, frankly, hilarious excuse for a car, I would have much preferred to see some additional architecture back here. Fortunately though, it isn't all bad. As I mentioned, we get some great parts here, like this black and blue sarcophagus, another new at the time addition, as well as a printed cartouche flanking each side of the door, and another curse tile. But I don't think I'd get too much pushback if I said that the real star of this show is this decaying, decrepit-looking mummy. This is Pharaoh Hotep, and he is fantastic. Sporting a level of detail not seen in any other character in the wave, he's not only one of my favorite minifigures from Adventurers, he's one of my favorite minifigures of the 90s. His face is wonderfully creepy, and at the time, he was among only a handful of minifigs to feature leg printing. And he's got toes. These definitely put him in an exclusive group. The dynamic between good guys, bad guys, and Pharaoh Hotep is so interesting to me. He's not really a villain, he just wants to keep his magical ruby, and will fight for it no matter who's trying to snatch it away. Even if you're just a casual adventures aficionado, I don't think any collection is complete without him, but luckily, he can be found in way better sets than this one. The only thing I like to use this for is as an entrance to one of the other sets in the theme. Otherwise, I'm not much of a fan. But I am a fan of 5919 Valley of the Kings. It consists of 3 small builds, a shrine, a car, and a tomb. And it was one of only 2 sets that could be purchased with this awesome golden mummy storage container. This thing is so cool, and works great as a giant statue in the background of your layout. You may also know this as 3722 Treasure Tomb, which came bundled with a more traditional carrying case. Being 3 small separate builds, this set feels a bit different from the others, but certainly not in a bad way. I think the shrine is the weak link here, but it does manage to pack a play feature in despite its small size. Pulling this pin will release a nasty surprise on any careless treasure seekers. Other than that, it's a bit underwhelming on its own, however, I think it works great as garnish for some of the larger sets. The car is definitely a unique piece, utilizing the coffin as a body. While I'm not sure if I'm entirely on board with this design choice, it gives this vehicle an undeniably sleek appearance, and technically can fit 2 minifigures if you get creative. I think it pales in comparison to the Scorpion Tracker and the Adventurer's car, but it gets the job done. But this is the main reason I like this set so much. There's just something about the realistic architecture of this section, with its beautifully printed details, fun snake pit feature, and rare yellow parrots. Front and center is one of the most elaborately printed pieces LEGO had ever made up to this point. This sarcophagus lid is just spectacular, and taking a peek inside the tomb, we'll see that we've got another bottom part besides the one in the car build, so you can always remove this and have yourself the completed sarcophagus, which is awesome. Of course, we get some very useful minifigures, and a handful of great accessories. I think Valley of the Kings flies under the radar sometimes, and while I wouldn't say it's anywhere near the best set in the wave, it's certainly worth picking up if you get the chance. Whether you know it as Desert Expedition or Treasure Raiders, or by one of its 3 different set numbers, this next one is a true fan favorite. According to Brickset users, it ranks as the 3rd best of all the desert sets, and it's up against some pretty stiff competition. I like to imagine that the premise here is that Dr. Lightning and Harry Kane have created some kind of diversion in order to lure our villains away from Johnny's true quest. I think Johnny's conspicuous absence supports this theory. At any rate, this set gives us some fantastic tools for all kinds of epic storylines. We've got a bit of terrain, some ancient relics, a car, and a plane. And this is my favorite biplane in the series. I just love the design here, from the patchwork details, to the shark's head graphics, to the detailed engine build hidden away in the nose. And it can even transport the included crate thanks to some simple but extremely effective construction techniques. I just love imagining an epic dogfight above the pyramids between this thing and the Baron's Bywing. Speaking of Baron, he and Sam get to cruise around the desert in this awesome hot rod, which comes complete with a souped-up engine and sweet side-mounted gun rack. If we again compare it to the Scorpion Tracker, we'll see that this one has a much more sinister color scheme. In fact, if you pay close attention throughout the theme, you'll find that this black and gray palette extends to all of the villains' vehicles, while our heroes' rides are primarily tan. My beloved palm tree makes another appearance here, alongside a small campfire, and we get another one of these amazing sarcophagi. Of course, being an adventurer's set, we're also provided with more weapons and accessories than you can shake a stick at. And this was the second and final chance to nab the mummy storage case. Coming from someone who actually prefers playsets over vehicle builds, this is another of my favorite sets in the sub-theme. And if you're willing to shell out its surprisingly high secondhand market value, I think you'll enjoy it as well. Stepping up to larger mid-range sets, we come to 5958 Mummy's Tomb. It's just crazy to me that this full-fledged playset on a 16x32 base plate, along with a vehicle side build and 4 minifigures, has about the same number of pieces as a modern Speed Champions set. Obviously, that's due to the fact that the pieces we're dealing with here are much more substantial, but something with this footprint today would probably have 3 times the part count. They really knew how to do a lot with a little back then, because this set is jam-packed with play potential. Beginning with Johnny's new ride, this thing is decked out with a massive engine and roll bar, clearly built for pure speed. I'm not sure how well it's going to handle off-roading through the sand dunes with next to zero ground clearance, but it sure looks cool. And the main build isn't too shabby either. It boasts not 1, not 2, but 3 play features, and has some pretty interesting architecture to boot. This tomb section reminds me a lot of the one we just saw in Valley of the Kings, with its more skeletal, open-air design. And peering inside gives us a glimpse of this very cool, set-exclusive red sarcophagus lid. And if we give this yellow knob up top a twist, said lid will spin around and reveal Pharaoh Hotep, lying in wait for any would-be grave robbers. Over on the left, we'll find another palm tree, as well as this obelisk. You can probably guess why it's built on a hinge. Maybe that'll knock some sense into him. Unlikely, though. And to the right of the tomb, we have this awesome stone carving, emblazoned with the Pharaoh's curse tile. It's here with good reason, because anyone brave, or stupid, enough to attempt opening this is in for a rough time. My one real complaint about this is that there's actually nothing behind it. Due to the way this mechanism is constructed and supported, it takes up most of the space, but it would have been cool to see some kind of treasure hiding back here. But that's one of my favorite things about LEGO. If you don't like something, you can change it. I find that to be much more productive than just complaining about it. Speaking of changes, remember this doorway to nowhere? Well, it makes for a superb upgrade here, adding even more visual interest to the build. But even straight out of the box as is, I still think this is a wonderful set. And if you're pressed for shelf space, it would make for a great centerpiece to a small adventurer's display. Okay, now we're getting to the heavy hitters. To me, 5978 Sphinx Secret Surprise is the quintessential adventure in a box. Everything you need for telling innumerable stories of your own making. It's such a well-balanced, well-rounded build that it gets 4.6 out of 5 stars on Brickset, making it not only the highest rated in the desert sub-theme, but part of a 3-way tie for the best adventurer set of all time. And while it's not my personal favorite, I can't argue with anyone who gives this the gold medal. It's jam-packed with play features, peripheral builds, exclusive elements, and a great cast of characters to bring the whole thing to life. My favorite of the side builds has to be this little encampment. The instructions imply that this is meant for our villains, but of course, you can decide if that's the case. The tent is constructed of this rigid fabric atop a simple brick-built frame, and can be opened on either end for easy access. As simple as it is, I find that this really adds to the story and atmosphere here, and works just as well with any of the other sets in the wave. The campfire pairs so well with it, and comes complete with a pot full of grub for hungry minifigures. And of course, it wouldn't be a proper adventurer's offering if we didn't get a vehicle. This one has all the same hallmarks as the other cars in the line, but also sports a printed license plate up front, as well as some nice engine detailing and a side-mounted movie camera. And the designer managed to squeeze a tiny bit more storage space in behind the cab, which I appreciate. I still prefer the Scorpion Tracker and Adventurer's car, but this one also more than gets the job done. Our final side build is this awesome little desk for Dr. Lightning to study maps and artifacts. I love the tiny microscope constructed from a then new sextant and magnifying glass. And it's going to get plenty of use because this is the only set in the wave to come with a complete collection of maps. LEGO just doesn't do things like this anymore. And as promised, more on these in a bit. The main build is constructed on an incredible set-exclusive 32x32 raised base plate. The mold for this first appeared in Paradise's Poolside Paradise from 1992, but it feels like it was destined for use here. To the right of this gradual ramp we have an obelisk, and behind that is its big brother. I love how these molded stairs curve around to its base, and you can see that it's built upon a hinge plate, meaning that the whole thing can topple over on any unsuspecting trespassers. And in the foundation we'll find a few gold coins, another of my favorite discontinued elements. The left side of the build is home to a tall palm tree, and this fantastic little statue of Anubis. This was some incredible design work at the time, as the number of small parts available then were a tiny fraction of what we have today. It's also back here at the top of these steps that I like to display this ominous looking black sarcophagus, inside of which we'll find another classic floppy arm skeleton with a set exclusive white headdress. Front and center is what may be my personal favorite feature of the set, despite its extremely simple nature. What was once a pool in this baseplate's first incarnation has now become a dig site. You can quote-unquote bury all sorts of cool artifacts in here to be dug up by our explorers. But watch out for the asps. Very dangerous. But the defining feature here is undeniably this amazing Sphinx structure. Once again, the shaping achieved with the limited parts catalog the designer had to work with is excellent. There's no questioning what this is supposed to represent. And at its base, we'll find the Regao Ruby. Or is it just a trap? Because anyone foolish enough to disregard the warning here and attempt to snatch this away is in for a rude awakening. There's a lever here on the side, and pushing it backward will cause Pharaoh Hotep to blast out from the heart of the Sphinx, crushing the hopes, dreams, and bones of any foolish treasure seekers. All of this comes together to form an absolutely extraordinary experience, and a set that 100% lives up to the high praise it receives. If you haven't added this to your collection yet, I can't recommend it enough. It can be pricey, but it's totally worth it. And that brings us to the final act in the Egyptian sub-theme, the grand finale, the culmination of everything we've been building toward. If you've watched my top 25 Adventurer sets video, then you know just how much I love 5988 Pharaoh's Forbidden Ruins. As a kid in the 90s, this was at the top of my wish list, in the company of other all-time classics like Fort Legoredo and the Skull's Eye Schooner. Ultimately, it took me 20 years to realize that dream, but I can honestly say that it was worth the wait. Boasting over twice as many pieces as Sphinx Secret Surprise, this set features 2 excellent vehicles, 10 minifigures, over 20 weapons and accessories, and of course, an awe-inspiring temple build. For starters, we get our entire cast of characters, every minifigure available in the wave, which is an unusual but certainly welcome occurrence. The hot air balloon is a unique form of transportation rarely seen in LEGO, even to this day. And I love the realistic little touches like the ballast and fully detailed burner. The netting up top is also a great inclusion. And there's enough room on board to carry our entire crew of heroes wherever the desert winds may take them. The truck is simply my favorite adventurous vehicle ever, as far as road-going automobiles go. It brings to mind the troop transport from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I can totally see Johnny dragging behind it as Baron and Sam try to escape with some stolen artifacts. The stake bed has enough storage capacity to haul away just about anything. And we see some other design cues not found in any of the other desert vehicles, like dual rear wheels, a roof, fuel tanks, and this chain mounted on the front bumper. While it doesn't have the same nostalgic and sentimental value for me as the Scorpion Tracker, this thing won me over the second I finished building it. It's just perfect. But we all know the temple itself is what makes this set such an iconic entry in the Adventurer's catalog. Sitting atop two 16x32 base plates and standing over 25 bricks tall, it demands your attention. This facade design is burned into my memory. From the unique jackal face, to the 4 exquisitely printed hieroglyphic panels, to the foreboding maw of an entrance. While some may have preferred a more traditional pyramid as the flagship set, the choice to come up with something completely unique and different was a good one in my opinion. There's nothing else like this. And the palm tree and obelisk standing guard frames the whole thing nicely. But the magic doesn't end at the front door. Being built on 2 base plates means we can separate the structure and have unfettered access to the interior and its many play features. The front half is home to a number of traps and treasures, the best of which is the one here that, by just pulling one pin, triggers 3 different calamities: the trapdoor, falling rocks, and the swinging axe. Genius level stuff. We also have another trapdoor to the left, and a treasure chest on the right. And this little alcove down here is home to Pharaoh Hotep's final resting place. And while it's not quite as grandiose as the front half, the rear courtyard still exhibits greatness. Again, I love the open-air feeling here. And we have some wonderfully unique architecture with these offset columned walls subtly funneling us toward the ultimate prize. Set exclusive in dark gray, these stone crocodiles are a nice touch, sporting some small details on top. And I also really like this little build here with the 2 scorpions. But the 2 statues flanking this skeleton are the cherry on top in my opinion. They look awesome, and I can almost imagine that they might spring to life at any moment in order to defend the Rhaegar Ruby from capture. And speaking of the Rhaegar Ruby, here it is. This tiny little thing is what all the fuss is about. Said to possess magical powers, and being Pharaoh Hotep's source of immortality, it's easy to see why our bad guys will stop at nothing to procure this gem. We're meant to place it here on this stand, and that brings us to one final awesome play feature. This skeleton back here is actually standing against a revolving door, and it can be spun around to reveal a magnet, which is strong enough to attract the one making up the ruby's plinth, snatching it away at the last second. This is so much fun to mess around with, and it's one of the best play features I've ever come across. The official story from LEGO, outlined in the promotional material for the 2020 Haunted House, is that Baron ultimately bested Johnny Thunder, and did indeed lay claim to the ruby, but at a terrible cost. Of course, the ending of this story is completely up to you, the LEGO maniac. One thing's for certain though, Pharaoh's Forbidden Ruins is one of the all-time greatest sets LEGO ever released in the 90s, across all themes, not just adventurers. It stands as a majestic finale to an amazing run of sets, a fitting flagship in a wave stacked with greatness. And until LEGO decides to resurrect adventures and possibly change my mind, it will always be my personal favorite set in the series. If you can only have one, this is my recommendation. It truly is legendary. And I think it's safe to say the same for the sub-theme as a whole. So much thought went into it, And the level of storytelling, character development, and attention to detail had never been seen in a LEGO series before. An example of how steeped in thoughtful detail the Egyptian wave is would be the maps I've been alluding to throughout this video. These actually correspond to specific sets and lead us in a linear fashion from one to the next. Look closely at each one and you'll see a number in the bottom left corner, and a set of hieroglyphics on the right. These hieroglyphs perfectly match those found displayed prominently on 4 different sets. Number 20 corresponds to the front obelisk on Mummy's tomb. Number 40 matches the left cartouche outside Valley of the Kings. Number 60 lines up with the marker at the front of Sphinx Secret Surprise. And finally, number 80 is a dead ringer for the top hieroglyph on the obelisk outside Pharaoh's Forbidden Ruins. You'll even see that the red X moves up the Nile with every new map. And to finish them off, each one is emblazoned with an accurate depiction of a character from Egyptian mythology: Khnum, Anubis, Thoth, and Horus. If you didn't know, Niels Milan Petersen is an actual archaeologist, and it shows. When I was a kid, I had no idea that any of this existed, and I would imagine that I was in the majority. So as an adult, finding this level of lore and storytelling baked into the theme was a mind-blowing revelation, and just made my love for these sets even stronger. Besides wowing us with timeless builds and giving us some of the most beloved LEGO minifigures ever, Adventurers laid the groundwork for many character-driven themes to come, and in my humble opinion, it remains to this day one of the best things to come out of Billund, Denmark. And even though those characters were presented to us fully developed, the story still felt like something we had complete control of, which for kids is so important for developing creative expression and problem-solving skills. Adventurers' longevity and legend are a testament to what can happen when the folks behind the scenes truly love what they're creating and aren't afraid to take a few risks. That in itself should be a lesson to us. Furthermore, it wasn't a theme attempting to capitalize on a then-current fad or some new extraneous technology. It was intended to inspire and captivate simply by being the best it could be. And I think we all, the modern LEGO group included, could take a little inspiration from that. So here's to everyone who had a hand in bringing us such an incredible journey. They're the true heroes of this story, and I'll forever be grateful for their contributions to my childhood. Looking back, little did I know when I first cracked open that Mania magazine on a cold January day in 1998, I'd be cracking open the adventure of a lifetime. Wow, that was a long one. If you made it this far, I can't thank you enough for watching. I hope my love and appreciation of the Desert Adventurers wave inspires you to check out some of these sets for yourself, if you haven't already. They truly are worth digging up. And if you'd like to see a more in-depth analysis of each of these sets, you can check out my Adventurers Retrospective playlist, linked in the description. A video of this size and scope would be absolutely impossible without the support of the members of Club Maniac. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have been watching this. Because of their contributions, I'm able to put in the time and effort required to really give these sets the attention they deserve. So we all owe them a huge thank you. There will definitely be more retrospectacles in the future, but I hope you'll check out some of my single set reviews in the meantime. It's been my goal for the past few months to make each one a visual treat, and enjoyable to anyone no matter the subject. But that's all I've got for you today. I'll be back soon, but until then, this has been Jamie for Trikbrix. As always, take care and play well.